Good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to greet you all on behalf of Cosmos Foundation to our very popular Ambassadors Lecture Series. This time, our subject is Bangladesh-Japan relations, and our keynote speaker is His Excellency Mr. Ito Naoki, the Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh. I bid him a warm welcome, as I also do to our distinguished discussants, Mr. Mohammed Abul Kalam Azad, Special Envoy, Climate Vulnerable Forum, Mr. Hayakawa Yuho, Chief Representative, JICA Bangladesh, Dr. Saliuddin Ahmed, former Governor, Bangladesh Bank, Professor Masaki Ohashi, Professor, University of Sacred Heart, Tokyo, Mr. Manzurul Haq, columnist, writer, and academic, Professor Takahara Akio, Dean Graduate of Public Policy, University of Tokyo, and Ambassador Tariq A. Karim, Honorary Advisor Emeritus, Cosmos Foundation. Japan always has a place of deep affection in Bengali hearts. Our two countries, Japan and Bangladesh, despite being located in different regions of the Asian continent, have a number of striking similarities. The flags being just a visible symbol, similarities run much beyond that graspable display. The culture of rice that in the East marks its starting point in Japan stretches to the West, well up to the territories of Bengal. Then there is the historical route of Buddhist religious teachings traveling from the eastern part of Bengal and going all the way to Japan via Tibet, China, and Korean Peninsula. Some of the tantric Buddhist rituals that are still practiced in some parts of Japan echo the teachings of Otish Diponko, who had traveled to Tibet roughly 1100 years ago with the noble task of spreading the message of Lord Buddha. Otish Diponko was a son of the soil of East Bengal. More precisely, he hailed from present-day Bikrampur of Bangladesh. Much has been said and written about Rabindranath Tagore's visits to Japan and also about his close understandings of the Japanese society through his friendship with Tenshin Okakura, Taiken Yokoyama, and few other enlightened figures of Japan's art and culture at the turn of the 20th century. Moreover, both Bangladesh and Japan, despite being homogeneous with small ethnic minorities enjoying constitutional protection, are actively pursuing the culture of tolerance. As a result, it is no wonder that the relationship between these two Asian partners has been based on better understanding and mutual trust. The foundation of this relationship gains its deep-rooted footing right in the days of Bangladesh's struggle for independence, even when Japanese schoolchildren, after learning about the plight of refugees fleeing for life and taking shelter in Indian soil, came forward to donate a small amount of savings from their lunch time meals. This symbolic gesture of Japanese school children back in 1971 is still serving as a driving force which is binding the two nations in a strong bondage of friendship. With our planet still in the grip of COVID-19, this year's Olympic Games are set to be unlike any other in living memory. Looking ahead, I believe it calls for a sense of solidarity with the hosts to let them know that we are behind them. If there's any megacity in the world that can pull this off, it is Tokyo. I believe it is no exaggeration to say that throughout Bangladesh's development journey of the last 50 years, Japan has been our closest friend and certainly the most important development partner. In 2022, our two countries will celebrate 50 years of diplomatic relations. In February 1972, Japan was one of the first countries to recognize the newly independent Bangladesh. The first JICA volunteers would arrive the following year, itself an occasion worth celebrating. The reason I say this because JICA, the world's largest bilateral development organization, is also a household name in almost every corner of Bangladesh. A name associated with trust, high standards, and a steadfast commitment to truly lift up people's lives. In Bangladesh over the years, untold millions have benefited from this commitment. The Big B, conceptually, refers to the idea of Bay of Bengal industrial growth belt. Bangladesh is viewed as a hub of connectivity, spurring economic development across the seas, bridging South Asia and Southeast Asia, playing once again its historical role of being a node and a hub in regional and interregional matters. Bangladesh has since then very ably demonstrated its promise and capacity of more than living up to these ambitious goals, having attained phenomenally high growth among almost entire Asian region in the time preceding the onslaught of the pandemic and even during it. From the Big B concept evolved the Mohesh Khali Matarbari Integrated Infrastructure Development Initiative, MIDI, which comprises an integral part of the Big B vision, in which Japan is involved as a leading development partner. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's epochal visit to Japan in May 2014, she and Japanese Premier Abe declared their commitment to further strengthen bilateral cooperation through the Japan-Bangladesh Comprehensive Partnership. Japan announced its commitment to provide Bangladesh with approximately $6 billion, mainly in ODA loans over 4 to 5 years. The concept of Big B was iterated at this time that later included MIDI, both geared to help Bangladesh realize its ambitious development goals. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited Japan again in 2019 May at the invitation of Prime Minister Abe. During this visit, Japan announced 1.2 billion assistance for economic development, high-speed railway, and other projects, including boosting energy efficiency in Bangladesh. At this summit, Japan also raised the idea of a free and open Indo-Pacific with his Bangladeshi guest. Even as Japan's geostrategic role and position grows in great strides, Japan has remained faithful to its commitment to Bangladesh. It has thus also significantly contributed to Bangladesh's current emergence as development success story. To me, it seems Japan-Bangladesh friendship is a function of not just mutual benefits, but mainly of pure fellow feeling. From whichever perspective you view Bangladesh-Japan friendship, it will stand out in all weathers and seasons, as does in 36 views of Mount Fuji in the famous paintings of Hokusai. It is my hope that through our deliberations today, we will seek ways and means of enhancing our collaboration on a win-win basis. We are pleased that to chair and conduct the roundtable, we have with us our renowned scholar diplomat, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Chaudhry, President of the Cosmos Foundation. So thank you all. And now I have the pleasure in passing the floor to our Ambassador Chaudhry. Ambassador Chaudhry.
Thank you, Nayat, for those remarks, and also for broadly delineating the parameters of our deliberations today. A very warm welcome to all our distinguished participants, in particular keynote speaker, Ambassador Naoki Ito. And we do have a battery of powerful intellects as discussants, including our friends from Japan. The splendid civilization of Japan, which evolved over centuries, became known to the outside world after Commodore Perry actually sailed into the waters in 1853. Rare in Asia, Japan modernized without going through any period of Western imperial domination. As Japan progressed its technological development, Southeast Asia and East Asia, where I now live and work, followed Japan in using its free market model as if in a flying geese paradigm, an idea coined by the Japanese economist Kaname Akamatsu. At a point in time when major global actors are threatened by illiberal populism, Japan has remained now a stalwart of liberal and rule-based international order, as you heard from Mr. Khan's remarks just now. It has expanded multilateral initiatives, influenced regional and global agenda on trade and digital governance, among other things. Through a combination of clear-eyed leadership and innovative reforms, Japan has acted as a harbinger of international stability. Japan can take pride in the diplomatic leaders it has given the world. It was my fortune to work closely with the legendary Madame Sadako Ogata, and also with my two close friends, Koichi Haraguchi and Kenzo Oshima, both having passed away, the latter more recently. When Prime Minister Yoshihito Suga came into office, he did so with enormous skill and experience. We followed his pledge for administrative reorganization, digital transformation, and productive enhancement by reorganizing enterprises. Now, nevertheless, challenges at home and abroad remain legion. The COVID-19, the holding of the Olympics, with all these associated risk and responsibilities, the tensions of Sino-US rivalry, the situation in the Korean Peninsula, to name some. But the Japanese have the mettle to rise against the wind. And I have no doubt, through a pragmatic set of tension reduction responses, they will buttress the argument for Japan's fitness for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council. As for bilateral relations, I can state unequivocally that a major reason for Bangladesh having reached where it is now is because Japan has always held our hands. Apart from bilateral relations, Japan has also always facilitated funding from the Asian Development Bank. Personally, I've had many recollections of visits to Japan, of course, in particular an official one in 2008, when Ambassador Masayuki Inoue accompanied me. I had enormously rewarding meetings with Foreign Minister Masahiko Kimura, Speaker Kono Yohei, and the then Chairman of Japan-Bangladesh Parliamentary League, Taro Aso-san. I recognize and commend your own contribution, Ambassador Ito, which I have followed with great admiration towards the strengthening of the relationship of our two countries and our mutual cooperation. With these words, dear friends and colleagues, I give you Ambassador Ito. Ambassador Ito, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Chaudhary. I thank Cosmos Group and Chairman Leonard for inviting me today. Due to the corona pandemic, ambassadors and high commissioners here in Dhaka have missed opportunities for interacting with Cosmos Foundation. So this is a really wonderful opportunity, but still this is a webinar, and a traditional and highly accredited evening session will not follow. But because of this is an online program, we can have excellent and wonderful discussants from Japan. I have been in Dhaka for 20 months. So this has been a very fulfilling and very enjoyable assignment. And I feel so privileged, since now is the most exciting time to be ambassador of Japan. Our bilateral relations have sprung to a new height. We are celebrating, as Anad said at the outset, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of our diplomatic relations next year. Every day, I feel the vigor of growth, the dynamism, and without doubt, Dhaka is the most vibrant capital in the world. Despite the pandemic, the country will surely be the fastest growing economy in Asia this decade. First, I would like to offer my deep respect to the birth centenary of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu, and heartfelt congratulations to Bangladesh's Golden Jubilee of independence this year. Japan recognized Bangladesh in February 1972. Soon after that, Bangabandhu and the Japanese politician Osamu Hayakawa built strong friendship and partnership and steered cooperation between the two countries. The far-sightedness of Bangabandhu as a political leader brought about the idea of constructing the Jamna Bridge and enhancing connectivity. He thought collaboration with Japan is vital for the country. Bangabandhu's visit to Japan in October 1973, including his meeting with Prime Minister Tanaka Kakue, was a genuinely epoch-making event for the most trusted partnership and time-tested friendship. At an early stage, Japan helped Bangladesh build Sonargaon Hotel and a fertilizer plant in Gorasha. Agricultural development and human resources training also became part of Japan's collaboration. JICA started its volunteer program as early as 1973. In recent years, Japan's involvement in quality infrastructure building has become prominent. The two prime ministers exchanging visits in the same year in 2014 advanced our cooperation. They comprehensively expanded the partnership and elevated relations to a new height. Dhaka Metro, International Airport Extension, construction of Meghna, Gumti, and Kachipur bridges, Matabari deep sea port projects transform the transportation infrastructure. They will represent the new faces of the nation. Bangabandhu railway bridge over Jamna is also underway. JICA also conducted a feasibility study of Padma Bridge, which will complete next year. It is symbolic that Bangladesh became the largest recipient of Japanese ODA during its 50-year celebration. The amount stood at 3.4 billion US dollars. Japan continues to stand by Bangladesh and play the role of a most trusted partner for the development journey of Bangladesh. Japan will extend necessary cooperation and accord support to Bangladesh's endeavor to realize the Vision 2041. This month, Foreign Minister Momen mentioned in his message to his Japanese counterpart, Mr. Motegi, the people of Japan have a very special place in our hearts. We will always stand by our time-tested Japanese friends who stood by the people of Bangladesh since our War of Liberation in 1971. This message was sent to offer his kind condolences and sympathy in the wake of mudslide caused by heavy rain in Atami in early July. Today, we are tasked to come up with a prognosis of our amicable relations. So I would like to talk about our agenda during the next decade. Those are very important in shaping, I think, our ties and bondings towards the future. In my view, there are 5 challenges we jointly need to deal with for further consolidation of our relations. Fortunately, we have excellent discussions today, more experienced and knowledgeable experts, bureaucrats and practitioners, and learned scholars. So they will share their valuable views from historical, economic, geopolitical, and strategic perspectives and civil society's viewpoints. So I can limit my role just to set a framework for discussions. As the slide shows, I am of the view that there are 5 challenges ahead of us. Develop Japan-Bangladesh strategic partnership, make Bangladesh more attractive for business, expand people-to-people exchange, enhance cooperation with Bangladesh as a partner to realize free and open Indo-Pacific. Strengthen efforts to increase Bangladesh's stature in the region and beyond. I think our relations will naturally deepen in each of those agendas, but we should not take it for granted. We should make conscious and constant efforts to continue to enjoy the current state of play and develop further. We should not be complacent about ourselves. Even to bring us into a high dimension, we need to move forward as Rikshawara rides uphill. So the first point of the challenges is to develop Japan-Bangladesh strategic partnership. In 2014, the two leaders exchanged visits. Honorable Prime Minister says that our government reinforced and enhanced mutual development initiative for two peoples over the last decade. It was those visits that created momentum, including agreement on the joint initiative of Big B. So Prime Minister, when he assumed his post in September 22, he stressed in his letter to Honorable Prime Minister, saying that I would like to strengthen the bilateral relationship into a strategic one. Then, in his congratulatory message on 26 March, Prime Minister Suga said, so let me quote, this is a little bit long, but he said, Japan and Bangladesh have strengthened friendly relations since Bangladesh's independence. Looking to the 50th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations in 2022, he will work together to further strengthen our ties and develop our bilateral relations into more strategic ones. The development of quality infrastructure and the strengthening of connectivity under the Bay of Bengal Industrial Growth Belt Big B initiative will be beneficial not only to the development of Bangladesh, but also to regional peace and stability. Japan would like to continue cooperating with Bangladesh toward the realization of a free and open Indo-Pacific. There, I think he clearly set the direction in which two countries' relations should move forward. So the next year should provide excellent opportunities for our strategic partnership by promoting multifaceted cooperation, sharing vital interests. We can deepen political, economic, cultural, and even strategic relations. In that sense, as the two countries see progress in the following 4 areas, we will be able to develop our partnership into a strategic one. And most recently, the two foreign ministers had really wonderful telephone conversation on June the 22nd. They focused on basically 2 agendas. One is how to fight against COVID-19 pandemic, and another is Rohingya situation. So 2022 will provide excellent opportunity to elevate our partnership even to higher level, and we could call our partnership as a truly strategic partnership. Second challenge is make Bangladesh more attractive for business. But of course, this is the area mutual efforts required. So I'm not saying that only Bangladesh should make its own efforts to make its country's situation environment more attractive for business. Recent trends shows that our bilateral economic partnership has been growing and becoming more prominent. The number of Japanese companies operating in Bangladesh now more than 300. Bilateral trade is on the steady rise. Though Japan was the largest export market in Asia from Bangladesh until fiscal year 2022, India took us over in the most recent fiscal year. But still, Japan exports around $1.2 billion. So perhaps this change is because of the slow demand for consumer goods in Japan. So hopefully, the economic recovery will bring Japan back to its traditional position. Foreign direct investments from Japan have been increasing, but there is much room to grow further. The flow of Japanese investment into neighboring countries is much, much higher. So if you take the example of Myanmar, the figure is 1 digit larger, and figures into Thailand and Vietnam are 2 digits different. So this is clearly the area we really need to make more conscious efforts joining hands. So I think there are 2 crucial projects in terms of inviting Japanese investment into Bangladesh. One is Arai Hajar Special Economic Zone. I have been advocating Arai Hajar should be the best possible economic zone in Asia, beating its rivals in countries like Vietnam, Myanmar, and the Philippines. We want the ease of doing business, as well as better incentives, including corporate tax incentives. Another is Mitsubishi Motors Corporation's investment in the CKD factory, which is vital for developing the automobile industry in this country. Mitsubishi is planning to make investment, so I strongly hope that the government will act quickly for the realization of Mitsubishi's investment. As for the investment climate, there have been a lot of improvements despite the pandemic. I fully appreciate efforts made by the government. Nevertheless, some issues remain. I would say there are three main challenges in the eyes of Japanese companies. Most Japanese companies are not happy about the customs clearance, which takes time and requires them to go through cumbersome procedures. Next comes the trade financing, in particular, slow processing of letter of credit and restrictions on telegraphic transfer. In only two countries in Asia, a telegraphic transfer is not used as the primary method of settling import transactions. Bangladesh and Pakistan maintain similar restrictions. You need deregulation here. Furthermore, this is written at the bottom right corner of the slide, the grafting culture has often been pointed out. A request for speed money still exists. Apparently, the situation is getting worse due to the pandemic. At the offices of the Customs and the Export Promotion Bureau, many companies receive requests. Frankly, our companies don't like the renewal of the license of bonded warehouse every 2 years because of this culture. But overall, I'm really appreciative of the fact that we have seen the progress over the last 12 to 14 months. Particularly, automobile industry development policy was formulated. Registration fee for two-wheelers was reduced, and container round use was permitted between port and EPZ. So I think government is really setting a good direction of reform, regulatory reform and deregulation. So I think joining hands, we really need to push this trend further so that this country can offer a really better investment climate. Although this doesn't show, or this slide doesn't show, but it's significant for Bangladesh to have bilateral FTAs, EPAs. So Bangladesh graduates from LDC status in 2026, and it needs to increase the flow of trade and investment. Japan should also establish a new set of rules of engagement on a bilateral basis by then. So it is high time we started a joint study for that. Also, I want to emphasize that integrating into the ASEAN market is crucial for Bangladesh, and free trade agreement with ASEAN or even acceding to RCEP is worth exploring. And the third challenge is, I would say, expand people to people exchange. So cultural aspect, this is a very, very important area for the future. People here are so friendly to Japanese people. I have found it easy to get along with people in Bangladesh. As Enayat touched upon at the outset, culturally, we may have certain similarities. So rice growing nation, green lovers, family values importance. Neither of us is abundant in natural resources, but both are rich in human resources. And we know we cannot tame Mother Nature as a natural disaster hits us frequently. So these may facilitate our mutual understanding. And the fact that Bangladesh was placed under the influence of Buddhism relatively long may impact the character building of Bengali people. So in my view, Bangladesh is part of our Asia. Some Japanese say that our Asia ends at the Arakan mountain range, but I found that Bangladesh is part of our Asia. So these slides show some of the programs Japan offer for young Bangladesh. First one is JDS, scholarship for officials. So every year, 33 officials are selected to study in Japan. And our Monbusho MEX scholarship is offered around 150 people every year. And third one is JICA's project. So ICT engineers training in the name of BJET. So far, we trained 265 people. And I think a good thing about this is people, after attending the course, have the opportunity to work in Japan for Japanese companies. So 65%, 174 ICT engineers are now working in Japanese companies. So I think this program has been very, very successful program. And I do hope that all of those people who have gone through academic training or work experience in Japan will become big fans of Japan. And the increasing number of students can, I think, that students still can increase from Bangladesh to Japan. If you look at that chart, compared to Nepal and Sri Lanka, the pace of increase is still slow in the case of Bangladesh. Now we are setting up an office of university to university cooperation and exchange in Dhaka. So that should help increase students coming to Japan and joint research initiatives between universities. So this slide is a very, very important theme, how we can increase technical intern trainees and specified skilled workers from Bangladesh to Japan. We concluded MOC on respective areas, but we only have less than 100 people on average from Bangladesh who are getting visa going to Japan to be technical intern trainees. So matching supply and demand, systemic training, including the Japanese language, and young workforce development in general, those are the areas that require improvement to increase the number of TIT as well as specified skilled workers. Our sincere hope is that Bangladesh's workforce will make up for the declining labor population in Japan, particularly in IT sectors, agriculture, construction, nursing, and elderly care. With increasing of the middle class, I expect tourists from here to visit Japan and enjoy Japanese culture, nature, and food. The shooting of a Bangla film can take place in some scenic and historical sites in Japan. The number of visitors from Bangladesh is fewer than those from India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, though 3 times higher than that of Japanese visitors to Bangladesh. So 23rd Tokyo Olympic Game will open with opening ceremony. So this is the topic of the week, and I organized the online sending event or encouragement rally for Bangladesh athletes. 6 athletes represent Bangladesh this time. I would like to see the success story of every Bangladesh Olympian in Tokyo. The media's question is, can Ruman Shana shoot the first Olympic medal for Bangladesh? I certainly hope so. That would promote our partnership through sports and enhance its visibility. But we should not put too much pressure on Ruman. And right-hand side is the picture from Japan Fest 2021 with Tasan Khan. This turned out to be a success, and our YouTube reached more than 500,000 views. So this shows you that there is a group of young people who are really interested in Japanese culture and exchanging ideas and so forth with us. So I think next year we should be really ingenuitive to make the most of those younger generation for better cultural exchange and for deeper mutual understanding. Next challenge is to enhance cooperation with Bangladesh as a partner to realize free and open Indo-Pacific. So this is the how we explain the vision free and open in the Pacific. So this is the vision of peace, stability, and prosperity of the entire Indo-Pacific region. So recently, Quad leaders met for the first time. ASEAN announced ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific in 2019. And since two years back, European countries have focused more on Indo-Pacific. So I think increasing number of countries and in enlarged areas are now talking about the Indo-Pacific region, focusing on Indo-Pacific. And even G7, the communique says that the importance of maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific, which is inclusive and based on the rule of law. This is to share a vision for peace, stability, and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific. And we share values between Japan and Bangladesh. We maintain a rule-based international order, consolidating principles such as free trade, freedom, navigation, and rule of law. But nevertheless, when the rule-based international order is challenged, that doesn't serve the purpose, and it needs to be pointed out. On these basis, we advance practical cooperation to realize the FOIP vision, including those areas on listed items like quality infrastructure connectivity, humanitarian assistance, disaster management relief, counterterrorism, non-proliferation, anti-piracy, COVID-19 pandemic. We have some plans to enhance cooperation in maritime security, capacity building on maritime law enforcement and counterterrorism. Big B is a part of this vision of free and open Indo-Pacific. So I think mainstay of Big B is, of course, MIDI, which Mr. Azad was fully involved. So Mr. Azad is the, I think, started this MIDI project. I'm sure that he will explain how he came up with this MIDI project later on. But this Bay of Bengal industrial growth belt is very, very important for development of Bangladesh, but also for our bilateral relationship. And our leaders are really conscious that Big B is important not only for the development of Bangladesh, but for the stability of entire region, Bay of Bengal region, beyond Bangladesh itself. Let me touch upon relevant factors to infrastructure cooperation. So project needs to be economically efficient, and that should be in line with debt sustainability, ensuring openness and transparency of project formulation and implementation. As I said, the two foreign ministers talked about COVID-19 during this telephone conversation. Japan stepped up its cooperation with Bangladesh over the last 12 months for Bangladesh's fight against pandemic. For the first time last year, we provided budget support for Bangladesh. And the second time this year, we will soon provide budget support for Bangladesh. And we decided only last week, 2.9 million AstraZeneca vaccine doses will be sent to Bangladesh through the COVAX facilities. Hopefully before the end of the month, you will get 2.9 million doses of AstraZeneca from Japan. Those are the examples of, those are the slides showing the cooperation on Rohingya crisis. Why I include Rohingya crisis here as part of free and open in the Pacific? Because humanitarian assistance, humanitarian crisis are very much the part of our vision when we talk about the stability and peace of the region. So, and also Rohingya crisis is very much relevant to the future stability of the entire region. So as part of FOIP, Japan is really motivated to address this humanitarian crisis. So now Cox's Bazar camp situation needs to improve. So services like education, skills training, and protection must resume. And also in parallel to that, Bhasanchal should find a way out. So we should take a comprehensive approach, both Cox's Bazar and Bhasanchal. Japan expects the UN's operational engagement on the island soon, since that is crucial to move forward. The project has got to be successful from a long-term viewpoint of dealing with durable solutions. Otherwise, the whole process may delay. It is clear now that repatriation takes much longer, though Japan will do its utmost to create an enabling environment for the early repatriation of refugees and continue to raise the issue with the Myanmar side whenever appropriate. This slide shows the Bangladesh's commitment to international law. That was clear from this example, demarcation of maritime border with India and Myanmar. So this was done through peaceful means based on rules-based international order. In 1974, Bangabandhu mentioned that Indian Ocean region must be a free and peaceful region. Of course, at that time, the geopolitical, geoeconomic situation was different, but still I see some similarities in the approach. And the last point is to strengthen efforts to increase Bangladesh's stature in the region and beyond. In March, when I attended some of the events during the 10-day twin celebrations of Bangabandhu's birth centenary and golden jubilee of Bangladesh independence, it was clear in my eyes that Bangladesh was the center of regional cooperation and regional diplomacy. For those 10 days, it was Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina who received 5 dignitaries from neighboring countries in the region. So this was made possible without a doubt by the rapid and successful economic development of the country and the political stability which this country enjoys right now. So there are some more examples of Bangladesh's initiative in the region. Assistance to India in the context of COVID-19, a swap agreement with Sri Lanka, and of course, this traditional cooperation and contribution to UN peacekeeping operations. Japan wishes to encourage and cooperate with Bangladesh for its further efforts and expects Bangladesh to show some deliverables in linking with ASEAN and addressing global agenda, such as climate change. Bangladesh is now in the chair of Climate Vulnerable Forum. So this sort of efforts should in turn create a new image and perception of Bangladesh. Even in Japan too, there remains a perception here. The rapidly changing reality of Bangladesh has yet to be recognized and understood. Last but not least, I would like to thank NIAT and Cosmos Foundation for giving me this opportunity and hosting a webinar to discuss the friendship and partnership between Japan and Bangladesh. In closing, I want to say 3 things. First, we will celebrate our 50 years in style in cooperation with the government here. Japan plans and organizes some events and cultural exchanges next year. We can provide opportunities in particular to younger generations for showing more interest each other and for better mutual understanding. Second, I will do my best to see progress in each of those 5 challenges I touched upon. I believe we can do more to forge a genuinely mutually beneficial win-win relationship. Third, I look forward to further collaboration with the Cosmos Foundation and those discussants here with us today. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Onek Donavad.
A big round of applause for Ambassador.
Thank you, Ambassador. That was extremely informative presentation, bringing to the fore all the key elements in a relationship. In a relationship by which Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina places great store by, and my discussions with Foreign Minister Momin gives me certainly the knowledge that Japan's bilateral relationship with Japan is the centerpiece, is a centerpiece of Bangladesh's foreign policy. Now, I also wish to note in particular your reference to the 5 challenges. Some of these are indeed challenges. and how these challenges can be met and overcome and can be brought to fruition into some kind of a strategic relationship that you spoke of, for which the 3 points that you made towards the end of your presentation will be of great assistance. Thank you very much. I shall now turn to the discussants. As I had said earlier during the dry run, that I'll confine the introductions to just the names, since all of you have the CVs already. So this would, of course, save time for us, and this would also, I think, in some ways facilitate the interactions. I have now much pleasure in giving the floor to Mr. Abul Kalam Azad. In my earlier avatar, he was a very dear colleague, and as you know, that he has a very principal role to play in this bilateral relationship. Azad, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot to Ambassador Ito for very nice deliberation covering all the aspects. The journey of Bangladesh is now from recognition in 1972 to Moheshkhali Matarbari Integrated Development Initiative. The intervention by Bangladesh in 1977, when Japanese plane hijacked and it was grounded in Dhaka, to the Holy Artisan of 2016. The relationship from establishing Hotel Shonarga to development of Matarbari. This is simple cooperation turned to strategic partnership through comprehensive partnership. And Big B of 2014. I say from Bangabandhu to Hasina, a relationship with glorious relationship with Japan, starting with 3 million to more than 1 billion per year. The detailed canvas has been drawn by Excellency Ambassador. I will put lights on the economic cooperation, especially public-private economic dialogue, Big B and MIDI. But starting with the background story of Bangladesh in last 10 years, if we look into the education sector from 54 to 75%, per capita in last 10 years, $686 to 2,227, which is more than triple. GDP growth average from 6% to more than 8%, about 9%. And also reserve from 7.5 billion to more than 45 billion. Electricity generation, only 3.3 gigawatt to 24 gigawatt. In all these activities, obviously, good friend Japan has a very prominent support in all this area. Starting with the PPED, Public-Private Economic Dialogue. This started in 2014. I would say this is the foundation of new era in the development of Bangladesh, cooperation from Japan. So PPED started its journey with high-level co-chairing, participation from private sector of both Bangladesh and Japan. It is an excellent forum discussing all the issues which has been discussed today by Excellency Ambassador. The list was too long when we started journey in 2014. In these last 6 years, 7 years, we could solve so many, and some pending issues are there. I believe when these will be tabled properly, this will be also solved. This PPED used to happen twice a year, one in Japan, another in Dhaka. So the parties, partners, participation from both public and private sector, raising all the issues well discussed and take forward to both of the government for solving the issues. We had some issues also. including visa issues, including how best we can get support from Japan, all this. So this PPED, what challenges and what achievements? Achievement is, you see, in 2009, only about 80 Japanese companies were in Bangladesh. Now we heard from ambassador, this is more than 300, about 340 Japanese companies are investing in Bangladesh. But on the way to this success, we had so many challenges. You see, economic slowdown, 2007 and 8. Then, for especially in Bangladesh, 2013, lawlessness by some quarter of the political arena. And then when the situation was growing very well, all on a sudden, 2016, holyartism. Again, 3 years, 2019 passed and 2020 facing the COVID. So with all these challenges, this development happened. And I believe the flag which we are carrying, similar flag of Japan and Bangladesh, and journey will be much more speedy. Now, looking into the Big B, almost at the same time, journey of Big B started. The basic concept from capital city. So this Big B from Dhaka to southeastern Chittagong and Cox's Bazar, a long corridor, economic corridor, opening the sea for the globe, for the development of our Bangladesh. And under this Big B, we had several initiatives of economic zone. And finally, the creation of MIDI for the development of Maheshkhali and Matarbari. This started its journey in 2011, basically, when Japan had the power sector master plan in 2011. Then we identified this area of Maheshkhali, which can be a very good potential for the economic development of our country. And from then, Japan was always on with us. And gradually, when we had our second review of this master plan in 2016, and finally now also a comprehensive master plan. So Maheshkhali Matarbari was identified that time, and it took a full shape of Maheshkhali Matarbari Development Initiative in 2017-18. MIDI comprises of deep sea port, so many power plants, energy hub, and also a big economic zone. And I believe with the support of Japan, like their port in Hashimoto, this economic zone is a game changer for our country. The first deep sea port in Maheshkhali, Matarbari will change the picture of our country. So with this Big B and Maheshkhali Matarbari Development Initiative, a comprehensive plan is being prepared in under the MIDI. So the whole area, which is half of the Maheshkhali Upazila, will be converted into all types of economic activities. We all know this Maheshkhali faces towards its west, the Bay of Bengal. The whole area is open for different types of economic activities, starting from deep sea port, ends with the ecotourism in Shonadia Island. So role of Japan is very prominent here. Especially, I need to mention the name of JICA, need to mention the name of JETRO. We all know JETRO in 2014-15 had their study, and the Japanese investor, they ranked Bangladesh as the first destination of their investment because of so many reasons. And it continued for a long time. The this study also led the progress in investing by the Japanese investor in Bangladesh. I would mention another area of cooperation of Japan, which is the JDS and the Japan Debt Cancellation Fund. This is one of the very good gesture of Japan, that the debt cancellation fund were used for the skill development, for development of education. And a good number of students, those who had their higher education in Japan, they went under this support of Japan. Now, the challenges, as mentioned by His Excellency, the area of customs, money transfer, and also some crafting issues. I strongly believe the issue in our country for adopting the annual performance agreement and also grievance redress system in our country. You all know from 2015, government started in the whole of the government approach, the annual performance agreement, contracting what a specific ministry will do in the next year. Likewise, it is disseminated to the division, district, sub-district, and personal level. So a pen stroke of an employee has the impact of implementing the annual plan of the government. And likewise, it goes to the long journey of our Delta Plan 2100. I will end my deliberation by telling that one-stop service law has been enacted in 2018, and also doing his business activities has got momentum from that period. In the meantime, we could progress so many, but long way to go. When the one-stop service will be here, the issues which is raised by Excellency Ambassador, most of the cases, especially customs, crafting, will be wither away and die. I will end with the telling of the dream trajectory of Bangladesh. We are graduating from LDC, supposed to be 2024, but for Corona it is 2026. We had the plan of achieving middle income country by 2021, which we achieved. We are going to have the implementation of SDG. You know, from 2016 to 2020, Bangladesh is #1 in progressing SDG, #1 by Jeffrey Sachs. So implementing SDG is very near to us. We had the prosperous plan of developing Bangladesh 2041. We have 100 years of our independence 2071, and we have the from now 80 years plan of Delta 2100. It's a very clear dream trajectory. We always believe the very, very close friend like Japan will be always with us, and this will enhance the speed of our journey towards developing Bangladesh. So join hands together for this cooperation, and we believe as the Crown Prince Akihito, he traveled Bangladesh in 1975, and we expect 2022 another glorious event will happen for celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relation with Japan and Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Azad. In fact, your presentation was very rich in data and also analysis. And in a very short time, you also responded to some of the challenges that the ambassador had raised, because these are the challenges that need to be addressed and overcome. And also you brought in the SDGs, which was very important, very significant, very relevant to this topic as well, but very relevant generally, and your association with Jeffrey Sachs, I would assume, being in the United Nations system for some time, it's very heartening for me to see that you are in the lead of this immense task that we in Bangladesh confront. I have now much pleasure in turning to our Japanese friends now, and I will begin by giving the floor to Mr. Hayakawa Yoho. Mr. Hayakawa Yoho of JICA, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chaudhry. Let me share the screen. In my part, I would like to speak about the current JICA's cooperation to Bangladesh. It's my view on its characteristics and their future prospect. JICA is, as you know, Japan's ODA agency with offices in around 100 countries and areas around the world. We provide technical cooperation, grant aid, yen loans, support for development projects, projects by private companies, and dispatches volunteers for those countries. In Bangladesh, all of our aid instruments, except sending volunteers, are being implemented on a large scale. The total amount of yen loans committed is equivalent to $22 billion and $850 million worth of technical cooperation has been implemented. About 1,300 volunteers have been dispatched to Bangladesh, although the operation has been suddenly suspended after the terrorist attack in Dhaka 5 years ago. Especially after the 2014 summit, the scale of the Japan's cooperation with Bangladesh has grown significantly. As His Excellency Mr. Ito already mentioned in his keynote speech, Bangladesh is now the largest recipient of Japan's ODA loan commitments for the Japanese fiscal year 2020. In terms of the amount of Japan's ODA loan disbursements, Bangladesh is the second largest in the world after India. This is a clear indication of how big projects are actually moving forward in this country. As you all know, huge projects in Big B, such as 3 MRT lines in Dhaka, integrated development of Mohesh Kalimata Valley area and deep sea port there, Dhaka Airport Terminal 3 and Bongobondu Jamuna Railway Bridge, EZ in Alai Hajar are under construction. In the past, JICA has also assisted the construction of the historical projects like Bongobondu Jamuna Multi-Purpose Bridge, Meghna Bridge, and Chittagong Airport. However, I'd like to underline that the JICA's activities in this country have been further deeper and broader. In Bangladesh, JICA started its cooperation in August 1973, as Mr. Khan mentioned. There are 2 points that I'd like to emphasize here. The first is that our cooperation started soon after Bangladesh's independence and the establishment of Japan-Bangladesh diplomatic relations. The other is that the cooperation started with the dispatch of 3 Japanese volunteers, JOCB, for agricultural development. I think this is very symbolic that Japan, as an Asian country that had recovered from the damage of war, started the support for war-torn Bangladesh, and that our cooperation commenced from friendship-based grassroots, people-to-people cooperation. Dear participants, 2022 is the 50th anniversary of Japan-Bangladesh diplomatic relations, and in 2023, Japan's cooperation with Bangladesh will celebrate 50th anniversary. Looking back the past 5 decades, 4 features of JICA's assistance to Bangladesh can be identified. Firstly, we have focused on development and growth of Bangladesh in addition to humanitarian assistance. Good examples of cooperation are Sonargaon Hotel, construction of fast fertilizer plants, gas and electricity development in 1970s and 1980s. Japan believed in the growth potential of Bangladesh and continuously supported the country from the time when its GNI per capita was less than $300. Japanese experts and engineers stayed in Bangladesh for a long time, worked together with Bangladesh people in the field, and produced concrete and tangible results. Second point is that the cooperation has been very broad and deep. It's not just mega projects. We have provided various kinds of cooperation for protecting the vulnerables and reducing poverty and safer and cleaner life, such as solid waste management, disaster prevention, small roads, bridges, power transmission, and irrigation facilities in rural areas, capacity building of local government, support for agricultural institute, introduction of high-yield varieties, maternal and child health care. For more than 20 years, JLCB volunteers worked to eradicate polio and filaria. We have also provided support for science and mathematics curriculum in primary education. Thirdly, JICA Bangladesh has been working in participatory rural development and microfinance in Bangladesh for decades. JICA is providing support for microfinance and financial integration projects in many countries, but its first full-scale support was cooperation with Grameen Bank in 1990s. JICA has learned a lot from this country's social development and has been able to utilize those knowledges gained in this country to other countries worldwide. The fourth point is that variety of Japanese people have been involved in ODA cooperation in Bangladesh. It's not only consultants and construction companies. A variety of human resources, including Japanese NGOs, civil servants, teachers, university faculty members, have come to Bangladesh. In addition, we can now see the different type of people-to-people contacts. Young and talented Bangladeshi IT engineers who acquired skills through JICA's cooperation have now traveled to Japan to work for Japanese IT companies, as Mr. Ito mentioned. They are demonstrating the great capacity of Bangladesh IT industry to people in Japan. The multi-layered involvement of various stakeholders also resulted in a long-lasting friendship between the great engineer, Professor Jamila Reza Chaudhry, who passed away last year, and academic researchers in Japan. Dear participants, I believe these assistants have been really investment in the future of Bangladesh. We would like to congratulate that Bangladesh has become a middle-income country now and will graduate from LDC by 2026. I am proud to say JICA was also a part of this long, difficult, but splendidly achieved development process of Bangladesh. Dear distinguished participants, now let's turn our attention to the future. What will JICA's cooperation with Bangladesh be like? I believe that the bilateral bonds will become further stronger, and the role of JICA in Bangladesh will become even greater. Why is it so? There are three reasons. First, where countries such as Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, which had earlier takes off in economic development, transitioned from lower middle income to upper middle income countries, there was a huge demand for infrastructure development. For urban infrastructure, including metros and large transportation projects, it will become much cost efficient and more rational when projects are planned and started earlier than later. In Bangladesh, to catch up with those countries, JICA will continue to be able to play a significant role in promoting PPPs and supporting public investment projects. Secondly, JICA has been working with many other middle-income countries in areas such as environment, including sewage treatment, climate change responses, and ecosystem, higher education, preparing for aging society, support for the disabled, industrial diversification, and mobilization of private investment. There is also a growing trend to utilize digital transformation in our cooperation. We also have to tackle with climate change. I believe that the need for support in these areas will increase in Bangladesh as well. Third, mutual learning between Japan and Bangladesh is expected to grow more. In the opinion column of the New York Times on March 10th this year, there was an article called "What Can Biden's Plan Do for Poverty?" look to Bangladesh. In the future, Japan will have more and more things to learn from Bangladesh. And I hope that JICA can promote this kind of mutual learning and help. Once we can resume our JOCB volunteer operation here in near future, this type of two-way learning process will further accelerated. Dear participants, JICA will provide effective cooperation to development of Bangladesh in order to strengthen the ties between the two countries. I'm confident that JICA will continue to be a special partner which Bangladesh can always trust most for coming brighter futures. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayakawa, for that actually splendid presentation of JICA's role in this evolution of this bilateral relations. You focused not just on the past, but gave us the reassurance that this cooperation will continue. Under normal circumstances, the next speaker would have been Mr. Shahidul Haq. Shahid was a former foreign secretary. Unfortunately, his wife has been taken ill and he's unable to be with us. He sends his apologies and regards to all of you. So we shall just move on now. Dr. Salahuddin Ahmed, former governor of the bank, Bangladesh Bank, former civil servant, now an academic, wears many hats, an extremely well-known columnist and commentator. Salahuddin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ambassador Chaudhary. And my thanks to Cosmos to give me some chance to give my views. I'll be very brief and I'll touch upon some of the basic issues because details have been elaborated by His Excellency the Ambassador and also Mr. Abul Kalam Azad has also elaborate about the cooperation. About Japan, I'm really impressed about Japan because Japan always has been friend to Bangladesh and Japan is really sincere about developing the physical infrastructure as well as the capacity of the people in Bangladesh. Because I have experienced what Japan has done so far is not only the hardware, not only the infrastructure, bridges and all that. I think Japan has also emphasized the software side of it. You know, the software, the hardware, the computer, and also the soft skill and hard skill. So Japan has emphasized the capacity of the people, the knowledge base and all that. That is very important. Not only fun, money is also important, but the fun. So I've experienced Japan's cooperation because when I was in DG, Director General of Kumil Academy, there's a couple of rural development projects as Mr. JICA friend elaborated. And I saw the Japanese volunteers, Japanese professionals, and the professors. I used to know Mr. Kaida very well because he used to visit. Very sincere. We visited the field, and I was surprised that Japanese volunteers used to stay in the village. Even our Bangladeshi volunteers hesitated to live there for quite a while, but they were there. And especially in the agriculture field, I must say, Japan has contributed a lot through the Kumil Academy, through the agriculture extension. That is a very substantial, and you cannot measure the contribution in terms of money value only, but it is contribution to agriculture. Secondly, in the technical side, Japan has given emphasis. I know they are very well-known scientists, especially biotechnology, genetic engineering. I have a niece and their husband, both of their biotech, they are working in Japan. These kind of fields are very important. So Japan really encouraged. Of course, in economics and other things, they also emphasize. So this is one side of Japan. Then about the funding position of Japan, the excellent thing which Japan gives, they convert all the loans to grant. That is one. I remember once when I was the governor of the central bank in Washington, D.C., the finance minister and Saifur Rahman and I was approached by the World Bank to convert our loan to some kind of concept if Bangladesh declared as HIPI, that is highly indebted poor countries. That is very disrespectful proposal from the World Bank. Then as Saifur Rahman told me, let's discuss it. I said, no, sir, we cannot be termed as HIPI like the African countries. So we rejected the offer. I think the stance by Japan converting some of the loan to grant also helped us coming of the debt trap of the World Bank and other donors. So I think that also helped not only substantially in building bridges, also to enhance our statures. That is very important thing which Japan contributed. And about other things that which Ambassador Mr. Ajade said, MIDI and GIB, we must also be aware. Bay of Bengal has become a very important area now for Indian and Pacific Ocean. So Bangladesh must also look into what we call our security. It's not only political security, our economic security. Now diplomacy, the old style Silk Route diplomacy has gone, but now it is other diplomatic things are coming. So our Bay of Bengal must be a place for cooperation, of course, but we must also ensure our economic security so that business enhances and our economic, our routes to different countries of the world, especially the energy route, we say that our ships and other energy things, so pass through, and that is very important. Now about there's another thing which I now pointed out. It's true that our tariff, especially non-tariff barriers and customs and other formats are really cumbersome. I'm sorry, and Mr. Ajad also knows about that. We have been talking about NBR and customs duty to modernize things, and we have been talking. And this is Bangladesh has become a talk shop that we have been talking every year. I specifically mentioned there are many other economies of which our trade, tariff barriers, non-tariffs, and customs have to be rationalized. Of course, trade and we have rationalized, but it has not done yet quite substantially. So it has to be done, and that is not only for Japan, that for other countries too, because as rightly said that business environment, climate environment, the business must be important. Business is not like only just big roads and highways, but it is also the entry points of the business, products and other things. This has to be facilitated. Last on the not least, I think, I don't know, I'm not aware of if Japan has really taken an initiative to build a kind of special economic zone of its own. Korea has got its own economic zone, but it has got some small problems, but still they have got. And there are some special economic zones have been awarded by the government. So Japan can really can establish a kind of economic zone there. So lastly, I would say that the interaction between Bangladesh and Japan, both in the technical side, both in the social development side, that is very, very important. This side should be enhanced. I remember Professor Yunus led a delegation in which I was there for some health cooperation. And we spent about 10 or 12 days in Tokyo. But there was a grandiose plan by Professor Yunus to have hospitals, clinics, and other all over Bangladesh in his Grameen Bank style model, but it didn't materialize. But I think that wasn't a bad idea. And I think in the health sector, Japan, especially decentralized health management, Upazila and these village health centers and district level health centers, Japan can be of much help. Because I saw their hospitals, I saw their capacity and their management. And health management in Bangladesh is in a very appalling state. And that should be decentralized, and that should develop. And Japan can come a long way to help Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salahuddin. That was very eclectic. I mean, you brought in the soft sides of the relationship, etc. As to your query with regard to the special economic zone, I thought I heard the ambassador mention Arai Hazar. I would assume Arai Hazar is something that is aiming at something like what you proposed. Okay. Isn't that so, Ambassador? Arai Hazar is a special economic zone.
Yes, Arai Hazar is a special economic zone. The Japan is now developing.
Contemplating.
Maybe I can come back to this particular.
Yeah. That is why you will get that 10 minutes I spoke of yesterday. So there will be a response to your question. We move on to now to Professor Masaki Ohashi.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me, Chairman United Khan and Ambassador Chaudhary. Onek dhonnobad. I am going to speak, from a slightly different view, that because I'm an NGO activist, though I'm a professor. So I would like to explain, how we see our cooperation changed last 50 years. I made a small presentation on PowerPoint. The first page is this one. This photo was taken on top of Mount Fuji with Mr. Masood Momen. He's right now is Secretary of the Foreign Affairs. We climbed up to the top mountain. So now I'm especially talking about Shapranil. It's a Japanese NGO. Full name is Shapranil Citizen Committee in Japan who oversees support. So Shapranil is a Bangladeshi name. I will explain why so. We are functioning in Bangladesh last 50 years. Now I would like to talk about people's or people level, NGO level, people level cooperation in early period, even pre-independence. As someone mentioned, it is now we can call it the JICA expert, but under Colombo Plan, to which Japan joined after World War II confusion, to send some rice expert to Komila Academy. That was a Pakistan academy at that time. So I met some of those old experts and also some farmers, Bangladesh farmers, very much thankful to Japanese techniques of agriculture. And in 1971, during the Euro struggle, Japan-Bengal Friendship or Friend Association was formulated in Tokyo, Japan, to support your independence movement by some academicians, namely Professor Nara, Professor Usuda, Professor Taniguchi. Those are my professors in a sense. And citizens and religious groups, namely Bussho Gonenkai or Nipponzan Myohoji, etc. So they were well supported and made a campaign for to assist to the Bangladesh independence. And it's similar time, Japanese Red Cross. Otherwise, one of the presentator today, Mr. Fukiura, is a representative of Japanese Red Cross during this time. Japanese Red Cross came to Bangladesh to support, 1917 cyclone victims, especially in Hatia Island. So we have constructed a big warehouse in Chittagong port and with a lot of humanitarian materials. So unofficially, I can disclose that during the independence war, some materials, relief material was sent to that island. And that is why in that island, one road is named by local people as Prince Konoe Road. And Prince Konoe was at that time the Director General of Japan Red Cross Society and the Director General of the International Cooperation Division. Later, he became President of Japanese Red Cross and the International Federation of Red Crescent Societies. And 1972, after the independence, the Bangladesh Agriculture Reconstruction Service Corps was sent to Bangladesh before sorry to say, Hayakawa-san, before JICA volunteers, 50 young volunteers, was sent to rural villages in all corners of Bangladesh for 4 months from April 72. And then then Japan Bangladesh Society, JBS, was established by Mr. Hayakawa and Professor Nara, which I mentioned. This JBS was once stopped activities, but last 5 years, we re-established again. I'm serving as a vice chairperson of this society. And Shapranil, this was actually incarnation of this corps, was founded by ex-member of the members in Tokyo as a head of Bangladesh committee to continue the humanitarian support. So before the ODA, Japanese people started to support aesthetically to extend our sympathy and support. So this left upper side picture is my old young age face. JICA volunteers, now JOCB volunteers, are sent in 74, right? And to Bangladesh. I remember some of them. And most of them, as Hayakawa-san said, that they're specialist of the agricultural development or rural development. Head of Bangladesh Committee opened its office called Shaprani, because at that time, our representative name is Yuriko, and Yuri is not Shapra, but it was mistranslated. And Miss Shapra is living in a house. That house is a Nil in traditional Bengali. So that is why our office was called Shapra Nil. And this name later became our official title of organization title. And Shapranil started rural development project in flood-hit Manikganj. And OISCA, another religious NGO, has also started to accept agriculture trainees from Bangladesh in 74. And 76, JOCS, Japan Overseas Christian Medical Cooperation Service, it is not registered in Bangladesh, but working closely with Christian churches in Bangladesh, started to send a medical expert to CHCP, Christian hospital or something, right? And in Bangladesh. They always keep those people sending, though it is not well recognized officially. I would like to talk about a bit about Shaprani's evolution, of working styles in Bangladesh. As I already mentioned, in the beginning, we have a project in Manikganj, rural development project, by some young Japanese volunteers. And then from 1980, we changed the project style to organizing committees and people's group of landless villagers, initiated by Bangladesh social workers with 2-3 Japanese managers in several districts. At that time, our theory was empowerment of the poor. The first period, that time, Manikganj, we have a more charity mind, help Bangladesh. And the second period is more empowerment ideas. And now we change it, our style more differently, that our project is implemented by Bangladeshi NGOs, and we remain as a partner. So we are working minority children in Dinajpur, disaster management in Kurna, child education in Chor area of Norshindi, guard domestic workers in Dhaka and beyond. Now we apply our basic method or thought as a light-based approach, RBA in short. RBA is that we recognize these light bearers, or that means government officials, police, parents, local elite, or parent, whatever. They are supposed to ensure the human right of the right holders. That means children, destitute, vulnerables, handicapped, or victims, or refugees, etc. This is a basic idea that we have to support light bearers, including government officials, to ensure the human right of the right holders. That is our basic ideas. Although direct support is also sometimes very much important, but by and large, our idea has totally changed. Now you see the total number of the Japanese NGO working in South Asian countries between 2001 to 2015. How it's different. Bangladesh, 2001, 31 Japanese NGO, now come to 28. But the total number is different in Japan, working abroad, more number. That's mean less Japanese NGO working in Bangladesh. But that is not isolated phenomena in South Asia, India too, Pakistan too, only Sri Lanka too. But the Nepal is increasing. I tell you why. The number of Japanese NGO in Bangladesh has been always in the middle of the 5 South Asian countries in terms of the absolute number as well as relative numbers population-wise. An overall reduction of the Japanese NGO number in South Asia country except Nepal, which we observe. Historically, Bangladesh government, Nepal government always welcome foreign NGOs, but not others. Numbers of India and the numbers of Japanese NGO working in India seems bigger. You see here, India become much lesser, but previously it was much bigger. But if you consider about huge population of India, and Nepal has more in that sense because Nepal is increasing in the 3 crore population. So Nepal is really NGO country in that sense. Most of the countries, the number of the NGO has reduced because in general, South Asian government has a very strong or strict supervision on foreign NGOs or local NGOs receiving foreign money through not easy registering system and conditions, such as limited number of the foreign expert visa, only 1 Videshi or 2 Videshi, or increased the minimum budget size like Nepal from last year, minimum budget size more than $0.2 million. And that is why probably a number of small NGO, Japanese NGO have withdrawn from that country. Bangladesh has not so far not imposed this kind of rules so far, but also Bangladesh government also asked us to compulsory hard or construction segment and so on. But in general, NGO has a more soft part, because government can construct the huge ones. We can make small ones, but we want to spend more human resources or training and so on. So anyhow, in case of Bangladesh, consistent Bangladesh NGOs growth and improving economic development, graduation of LDC, and fortunately less disaster in comparison with the previous decade, and a bit high inflation and shrinking Japanese economy had reduced the number of Japanese NGO working in Bangladesh. This is my observation. This is, this red one is the number of Japanese NGO over 40 years. So it become so many times, right? But foreign NGO has increased only 4 or 5 times. So 1955, you see, in the beginning, we have more foreign NGOs, but gradually, 1990 is a big changing point that when so-called democratization of Bangladesh took place. Since then, Bangladesh local NGOs increasing substantially, while foreign NGO is steadily increasing. And recently, your NGO Bureau has canceled a certain number of the local NGOs. This is good and a big question too. And also, if we look at ODA change from between 1995 to 18, total amount is here. So, but you see the grant has decreased, and the loan has increased 7, 8 times more. And technical cooperation remains the same. And so percentage-wise, the 92% of Japanese ODA become a loan. 5.6% is a grant, and usually grant is more for more smaller amount but suitable for social development, while loan is much bigger amount and mainly economic infrastructure development. So this sentence is clearly more clearer in recent years, mainly due to Bangladesh demand, which China is also extending gigantic fund. And also dynamic expansion of Bangladesh NGO, I should mention that the BLAC is the biggest NGO in the world, and maybe not only big, but also the best, and operating a project in 10 other developing countries. And total expenditure, this is an interesting point, that the BLAC is approximately twice bigger than the all Japanese NGO international cooperation budget. So all Japanese NGO corporations budget twice bigger is a BLAC expenditure. It's a roughly estimated. So also 2017, Grameen Japan has also established an office to introduce microcredit to the destitute people in Japan. So in the future, what will happen in a people or NGO level cooperation exchange? We may expect that the various NGO and people level cooperation and exchange between Bangladesh, Japan, from previous one direction flow to the mutual flow, which also is mentioned by other people. Some Bangladeshi experts may work for Japanese NGO, while the other way is also true. Japanese expert maybe might be expected to be employed Bangladesh NGO. Some Japanese NGO working in Asia may start to care Asian workers in Japan because their human rights are not always appropriately appreciated. As Bangladeshi also coming TIT program, coming to Japan, their human rights would be our concern. More NGOs may work with private companies to support their supply chain management following UN guideline principle of business and human rights and SDGs, so-called supply chain management. Still, attention and support to human rights of the vulnerables, poor, GDW, and girl domestic workers, street children, handicapped, aged, Rohingyas, and so on is very much needed and important. And lastly, I would like to mention that appropriate civil society space is in respective countries should be guaranteed to ensure the global civil society as one of the universal human rights. you may face some problem to understand this, but you are talking about the business environment to be more free. Maybe we have to demand that civil society freedom also be demanded to as a universal human right. So this is Civicus is a global federation network of the civil society organizations. They monitor all civil society freedom situation globally, and they always put it in home pages. So red one is closed, and orange was replaced, and light orange is obstructed, and deep green is open, and this Japan is narrowed. So Japan is narrowed, Korean is narrowed, or Taiwan is green. And some European country is green, or deep green, or light green. If you see the South Asia, most of the country has orange. So we would like to change this one also more greeny, so that everybody in any corner of the world can really enjoy same civil society and human life. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Masaki. Your input into this discussion is an extremely valuable one. You bring in the contribution of the CSOs, as we call them now, the NGOs, for instance, the non-state actors, and particularly your own NGO, Chaplani, has obviously been contributing to this role. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, which is, of course, noted with gratitude. I will next turn to Mr. Manzoor al-Haq. Mr. Manzoor al-Haq, for those who may not be entirely au courant with his activities, he is a principal pair of hands behind the scene in developing or strengthening and building this Bangladesh-Japan relations. And he has been a forever point man, as far as I can recall, of Bangladesh in Tokyo for decades on end. Manzoor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chaudhary. And also, thank you all the speakers who spoke before me, making my task much more difficult, because most of the points have been spoken, particularly Ambassador Ito. He has his very elaborate speech has touched most of the points of our relationship and where we are heading to. So what I would like to focus on is not looking at the present or finding out what is going to be in the future, but looking at the past, so that from the past we can see how it evolved and what is in the future, what awaits our relationship. So not much attention had been given in our past development of our relationship. This Japan's relationship with Bangladesh is unique in the sense that the bondage has never been constrained by any disputed historical perception, nor it had been based on the narrow understanding of winning friends for the sake of ideological or economic gain. History doesn't stand as a barrier in the process of cementing ties, as it has been seen in countries across Southeast Asia. It might turn out a bit puzzling and might even look controversial if we try to demarcate exact timeline of the start of this unique friendship. As Anayat has mentioned before, that much has been said and written about Rabindranath Tagore, his visits to Japan, and how he established this early bondage between these two regions. However, we like it or not, we have to share those historical facts that Tagore visited Japan and others with India and cannot rightfully claim to be ours in totality. This part is ours of Bengal. And Horiprabha Takeda, a lady who is less known, on the other hand, is truly ours in the sense that she was, in all sense, a lady from Dhaka and visited Japan back in 1912, starting the long journey from, she has mentioned, Khilgram, which is present-day Khilgao of Dhaka. And after staying for about 6 months in Japan, she was back to Dhaka again, where she had published her travelogue, which was before Tagore's Japan Jatri was published. However, as she, along with all members of her extended family, later migrated to India soon after the partition, this makes the problem of belonging anything but a safe count also partially belongs to us. So a more accepted and convincing demarcation line, therefore, might be the period commencing a few years after the partition of Bengal in 1947. The partition paved the way for the emergence of a newly independent country carved out from Greater India, and present-day Bangladesh was part of that absurd formation. Japan at the time was still under US occupation, and it was only after the signing of San Francisco Treaty in September 1951 that Japan could re-emerge as an independent state, regaining the sovereignty the country was forced to hand over after World War II, after being defeated in World War II. And Tokyo's own diplomatic initiative, as a result, also started right after the San Francisco Treaty, that is, after regaining sovereignty, and establishing diplomatic ties with India and Pakistan in 1952 resulted in the opening of embassies in both countries. And this was quickly followed by the opening of country's consulate office in Dhaka. And with that began a new phase of Japan's relationship with Southeast Asia, particularly with the then East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. It should be noted that Japan at the time was in the list of only a handful of countries of the world that maintained consulate in Dhaka. The exception is more striking, as Japan's intention to forge a closer relationship with the people of East Pakistan didn't have any overt political or ideological clout. A list of other countries taking the same initiative might be helpful in understanding the fact more clearly. Here it goes. Except for India, that still had many common issues with Pakistan throughout 1950s, others who maintained consulate in Dhaka in that early stage were United States, Soviet Union, United Kingdom, France had with its cultural side, alien Francis, and China. West Germany and North Korea joined the rank in 1960s. What precisely policymakers in Tokyo had in mind remains unclear, as academic works, both in Japan and Bangladesh, hardly touch this sensitive issue of understanding the mind. A number of works with not so convincing academic backing claim that it was sort of Japan's repayment of debt for Bengal being supportive of Tokyo's adventure in mainland Asia immediately before and also during World War II. In other words, the gesture was similar to compensating for war damages, as Japan did for Southeast Asian countries. However, the concept has anything but a touch of truth. Throughout 1950s, Japan extended support for the eastern part of Pakistan in various forms. One of the earliest projects was Japan's participation in Shiddirganj power plant, and few others in early 1950s. And also Japan started providing scholarships to students from Pakistan to pursue higher studies in the country. And doing so, Tokyo also had shown keen interest to ensure that part of this offer went to students from East Pakistan. And throughout 1950s and 60s, we see this trend. Japan more helping to develop human resources, and also in small scale participating in project. And with this involvement, this bondage, which is a historical linkage, and cemented further. And we see in 1971, during our liberation war, Japan was not in a position to overtly express support to Bangladesh war of liberation, because we know Japan belonged to the camp, which was a little bit reluctant, observing what was going on. But still, we see that at citizen level, at people's level, there are enthusiastic support, people coming forward and expressing support and contributing as well. And after December 1971, Japan's involvement took a new shape. And many has been, our distinguished speakers also have been touched on that. But one striking point, which needs to have academic study, that Japan's role in 1971 at the Security Council. Japan was a non-permanent member at that time. And one of former Japanese ambassador Ito, I think, I'm not ambassador, it's Ambassador Ota. He is now working on that Japan abstained at the Security Council while there was a resolution moved forward by Western countries for immediate ceasefire. Soviet Union vetoed, eventually Japan was abstained. That's what prompted Japan to abstain? And also, what prompted Japan to move so fast to recognize Bangladesh? Japan was among the first batch of countries that February 10, 1971. And with that recognition, a new chapter began, new opening began. And I think we need to focus much more on those issues, because there was some scholars saying that at that time, Japan was a bit disappointed with the development of China-US opening, because Japan was kept in the darkness. So try to show an independent policy, but whatever it is. Parallelly, when this Japanese official side was moving on, a number of Japanese journalists, intellectuals, they started coming to Bangladesh right from the beginning, right after independence. So we know about Nagisa Oshima, who has made a wonderful documentary film on Bangabandhu in 1972. Oshima is an internationally renowned film director. Films on highest award in Cannes Festival and few others. And also at that time, a leading Japanese journalist who was Bangkok bureau chief of Kyoto News, he came and interviewed Bangabandhu in May 1972. And one of the striking points he mentioned that Bangladesh declared itself People's Republic. And many countries, they declare People's Republic, but people nowhere seen. But when he went to see Bangabandhu, he saw people lining up. Everybody, from old people from village, from the street children and others, everyone. And Bangabandhu's door was open. So he mentioned that People's Republic in practice in Bangladesh. These are unique observation of Japanese. And we know that later our relationship got a new dimension with the visit of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1973. And also their contribution of Takashi Hayakawa and group of people who had helped us to come at this point when our relationship is a very strong footing. And we are facing many problems, but still we are moving forward, joining hand with Japan. As Ambassador Ito has very beautifully mentioned that we have difficulties, but still like rickshawala riding uphill. Together we are riding uphill like rickshawala. And you know rickshawalas, when they reach the point, then becomes very easy. So our relationship will also become a very easy ride once we reach, and together we'll be reached that point. And I'm sure about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for introducing yet another very new element, Manzoor, to this discussion, the historical aspects, and how this historical aspects will mirror in some ways what is going to take place in the future. You're very right to say that there is a not necessarily unobserved a relationship between Bengal and Japan that was always there, apart from Tagore's visit, because many people in Japan are aware of Radhavallabh Pal, the Justice Pal, who's actually lived in Calcutta, but which I understand he came from East Bengal. He was he's one of the three judges in the trials, and he made some powerful observations in his judgment, for which there are shrines, I understand, to him in Yasukuni devoted to Justice Pal. Anyway, so these are aspects of relationship that we need to delve into. The support to Netaji also. I mean, since I live in Singapore, that's very obvious to me. So this whole relationship, we will certainly build on this, and that will be one of the tasks that our two nations will have. I have now great pleasure in giving the floor to our speaker from Japan, Mr. Professor Takahara Akio. Professor, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Chaudhry, Chairman Khan, and Ambassador Ito. Long time no see. Thank you so much for having me here at this very important dialogue. Now, I am a professor at the University of Tokyo and now director of the JICA Ogata Sadako Research Institute for Peace and Development. Unfortunately, I have never visited your beautiful country, Bangladesh, but I am proud to say that I have been a long-time member of Chaplainure. I can't even remember when I joined, but perhaps that was over 30 years ago under the guidance of Professor Ohashi. Now, in discussing the future of Japan-Bangladesh relations, let me start from talking about China, because that is my area of expertise. And I believe many of you are interested in the present and future of this rising power. And in fact, it is a good topic that will help us deepen our discussion on the theme of this dialogue of Japan-Bangladesh cooperation. But is it the case that Japan and China are always fighting or quarreling? Well, many people in the world believe so. And perhaps this is because the international media tend to report about Japan-China relations that way. And it is true that there is a serious area of contention in the East China Sea, especially around the Senkaku Islands, over which China started claiming sovereignty in a rather sudden way some 50 years ago. In fact, all the Chinese maps printed before 1971 call the island Senkaku in Chinese Jienge, and they don't use the Chinese name Diaoyu. But with the rise in its capabilities, China gradually began to take action. Since 9 years ago, China started to send a big number of their coast guards into the territorial waters and the contiguous zone around the Senkaku Islands. So if we turn our eyes next to the South China Sea, they have even constructed 7 artificial islands on coral reefs that they contest with some Southeast Asian nations, as you know. And Japan has repeatedly criticized China for attempting to change the status quo by physical force and for ignoring the ruling of the International Arbitral Tribunal in The Hague. But China hates to be criticized in this way, on this point, because they know what they do, in fact, contradict all the good principles and benign policies that they talk about. At the same time, however, Japan and China have cooperated and are cooperating on many fronts. Japan actually contributed in a big way to China's economic and social development and was by far the largest donor to China. In a way, that support succeeded. Maybe it succeeded too well, but anyhow, China is now by far the largest trading partner of Japan. The amount of trade with China is almost the size of trade with the US and the EU put together. We have good experiences in cooperating very well in dealing with the North Korean denuclearization question, anti-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia, environmental protection, health and sanitation issues, including COVID-19, natural disasters, and so on and so forth. So therefore, China's neighboring nations are all in the same boat. That is, we compete with China and cooperate with it at the same time. I believe the situation is basically the same for Bangladesh. The Chinese leaders, they believe in power and money, and they are ready to use them when they want to have their way. I think you are aware that the ICR's Yusuf Ishaq Institute in Singapore conduct very interesting public surveys among the ASEAN elite. The survey results tell us that 80% of the respondents think China is now the biggest economic power in Southeast Asia. But when that 80%, when they are asked how they perceive it, over 70% answer they are worried. So we all need to find a way how we can coexist and cooperate with China while resisting any means of physical pressure or threat of economic coercion that these days are so often employed by China. So Xi Jinping claims verbally they do not carry aggressive or hegemonic traits in their genes and say many, many other nice things, but now we have ample experiences to make our own judgments, not by what they say, but what they do. In this context of competition and cooperation, what should we make of the two visions for the region, China's Belt and Road Initiative on the one hand, the BRI, and the Japanese vision of the free and open Indo-Pacific, FOIP, on the other? The first basic point, I would say, is that both BRI and FOIP has two aspects, the strategic aspect and the economic aspect. If we focus on the strategic side, there is only competition. But if we take up the economic side, the two visions can coexist and cooperate. Second, my view is that we need not overestimate and demonize BRI. BRI is an elusive concept that I would liken to a constellation in the sky. Constellations are not real. I don't think any of you have ever seen a real constellation in the sky. They are concepts and images that only exist in your brain or in drawings, right? And what's real and tangible are the stars. In this case, the stars are the projects. Xi Jinping is pointing at the sky saying, look at all the shining stars, the projects. You see a dragon there, don't you? That's the BRI. And many of us would go, wow. And our eyes would glitter with our desire for renminbi. But let us take a deep breath here. We should not be dazzled. We should not be mesmerized by the pomp of BRI, which, if I was pushed to define it, which is a symbol of Xi Jinping's authority and power. And rather, we should look carefully into each project and prudently judge whether it is a good project or not. This actually applies also to FOIP, which in my view is another constellation. Now, can then BRI and FOIP coexist? Are they compatible? I think two constellations can share a star or two or more without any problem. In fact, Japan's former Prime Minister Abe stated very clearly that Japan was willing to cooperate with China's Belt and Road Initiative if its projects met certain conditions, such as being open, transparent, economically viable, and not undermining the fiscal soundness of the recipient of the debtor nations. If Xi Jinping has enough confidence to say that China will cooperate with the Japanese vision of FOIP, he could contribute to reversing the downward trend in international relations from peace and co-prosperity to geopolitical competition, the risk that we are facing now. I sincerely hope that Japan and Bangladesh will collaborate and create a lot of attractive stars in the region, even more. We heard that there are already a lot today, but we can do more. And I firmly believe that it's possible and that a dialogue like this will further our mutual understanding and contribute greatly to establishing an intellectual basis that we need for our good cooperation. And sorry to say, I'm afraid I must leave this dialogue after this, since I have another commitment that started 5 minutes ago. But in the future, I personally would be most happy to engage in exchanging our experiences in dealing with China, which no doubt is needed in both countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. You may leave indeed, but not before I thank you for an excellent contribution to these deliberations. I've been for 12 years since my days with the government in Bangladesh associated with the universities and think tanks here. I've followed the IC's, the ISAC study that you spoke of very closely, of course. At this point in time, I'm with the corporate sector in Singapore. And I entirely would endorse your thesis that the sky is large enough for two constellations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor. Okay, now I will turn to last but not least, to Ambassador Tariq Karim. Ambassador Karim, a very senior diplomat, very well reputed and respected, currently a very keen observer of global and regional issues. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry, for your kind words. Thank you, Cosmos and Inayat, for inviting me to this dialogue, which is basically a continuing process in the series of dialogues that Cosmos Center has had. My being at the tail end has certain great advantages, because much of what I would have otherwise stated, and that would have been a lengthy discourse, has been stated by many others. So in a sense, I'm disadvantaged, but I'm advantaged. I can focus basically on some of the points raised or some of the points which I want to highlight when I look forward. The past, we have dealt on the past, we have seen how the settings have been in place for our continuum of relationship. Let me put it that way, from the Bengal that existed before 47 and the Bangladesh that exists after 47-71. So I think this continuum is something that we need to keep hold on tenaciously and build upon. I particularly, now we have so many controversies going on in the region about, being for or against one narrative or the other. I particularly appreciated Professor Takahara's very refreshing take on, and I pointed out in one of my very early conversations with my good friend, Ambassador Ito Naoki, that we are very similarly placed. Japan is between a rock and a hard place between the United States and China. We are between a rock and a hard place between more than two countries, between India and China, and now between two narratives, Indo-Pacific and BRI. I personally don't see any contradiction in our having good relations with both and having active interactions with both. And I think Professor Takahara explained it very beautifully, that, the sky is, the universe is huge. There are constellations and there can be shared stars. Yes, absolutely. That's a beautiful explanation. We are with both. We are not against either. That has been, I think, my understanding of my foreign relations, not only when I was a part of the foreign policy formulation ministry and its executing professional, but also as an academic, now retired and looking at things from the outside. I see what we need to basically focus on when we look at the next 10 years or 25 years is where are our complementarities and how we can strengthen and build on those complementarities. I see one complementarity. Yes, Japan is helping us build our infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, we will not be positioned to resume, I don't say take up, I'll say resume our role as a fulcrum and a hub of connectivity between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. This is historical. This is not a new formulation. We were always there. We were the trading entrepot of powers coming from the West and proceeding to the East to do trading. And our history of undivided Bengal and other things will testify to that amply. We somehow lost that after 47. Bangladesh is robustly pursuing a policy to regain that lost place in this hunt. And commendably, Japan is the one country which stands out head and shoulders in helping us to develop that capacity and capability to resume our position. I see now in conversations I have with friends in the region, telling us that you are the natural region leader, please take this up and push it forward. So that's always a very encouraging sign to me. Where are the complementarities? Number one, I think a lot of, we need to look at that more carefully, perhaps look at that in a more well-planned strategic way. Our respective populations. Japan has a fast aging population. Its growth rate is already now in the decline. It has a negative growth rate of almost 0.30% now. And its aging population, 65 and over, right now it is 28.4%. By 2035, it will be close to 1/3 of the population. Bangladesh, on the other side, has a declining aging population. It has a youth bulge. Although our overall population growth rate has declined, our youth bulge continues to remain more or less consistent. This is where we can complement each other. I have seen a study done by a Japanese institution with statistics from a Japanese institution that over the next 10 years, Japan's workforce will be in desperate need of growth. Top 10 industries which will need skilled labor, as listed by in the Teikaku database, are automobile industries, retail, broadcasting, restaurant industry, rental and leasing, construction, security, drivers, agriculture, and information technology. I've seen a similar list drawn up between an American-Japanese study where America is looking at where it can complement with Japan in the future. And they suggest the top 10 industries that look forward to new workers in Japan will be medicine and cosmetics, foodstuffs and fisheries, chemical manufacturing, surveying and consulting, IT and internet services, electronics, general trading, banking, software development, and real estate construction. Now, I already see here the places where Bangladesh can easily come in and fill some of Japan's skill shortage requirements. Japan is already, as Ambassador Naoki pointed out, that you have exchange programs in the education sector, in the skill development sector. Perhaps you need to upgrade this, to expand this, to give it more dimensions, where helping us develop skill development in particular sectors, you can guide it to the sectors that will fill use. That's fine. It will give us skills, whatever we don't have, and it will enable us to help you fill in the sectors where you have a shortage. Focus on those areas, step up your education and training and skill development programs. That's what I would urge you to look at and revisit. You are helping us develop our infrastructure. Without it, we cannot reassume our position as a central, critically central hub in the Bay of Bengal. However, to keep this infrastructure functioning smoothly, we need a healthy population. And it has already been pointed out by one of the previous speakers, I think Dr. Saliuddin mentioned this, help us in having not necessarily a state-of-the-art health services sector, but an adequate health service sector, which will be able to cater to and safeguard the health of a population. And tagged on to that, I think a particular subsector, a specialty sector in the sector will be help us develop our own indigenous vaccine industry with an R&D facility. This pandemic is going to keep hitting us. I think I saw a report only this morning by WHO expert or some other expert that we are going to see more dangerous variants come up. To control any pandemics, you need to vaccinate a minimum of 70% of the population. A pandemic is global. So that means we will need to vaccinate 70% of the global population. Otherwise, you cannot stop its spread. Just stop it in one sector and leaving the others to flourish, you are constantly at risk because this virus has demonstrated palpably a sentient quality. It adapts to the new host and it thinks faster than the new host can react. And you can only do that by trying and getting 70% of the global population vaccinated. I do not see that capacity, even with the combined vaccine manufacturing capacities that exist globally, that they will be able to do that in the next several years. We ourselves, I don't think, have vaccinated more than 4% of the population by now with 2 doses. And if the virus keeps mutating, we will have to keep readapting the vaccines to meet the new demands, which means more time. So we are stuck with this. The only way is we develop our own vaccine production capacity and capabilities of R&D in this. We have good minds in the country. We have excellent minds also abroad. Facilitate their coming and working on this project. It will supply not only Bangladesh's needs, but it will add to the global basket of vaccines available for the rest of the world. Number 3, I imagine that Japan will be focusing a lot on artificial intelligence and robotics to meet some of its critical labor shortages. But robotics and artificial intelligence in the end need a human mind somewhere to be able to do the programming, to be able to oversee it, and to be able to service it and enable it to continue. Help us in the AI and robotics plan, not just in adapting it, but also in managing it. And it will, I think, complement and help both of us. Educational exchanges, I re-emphasize here once again, I think is one way where you can help us develop intrinsic capacity and intrinsic national resilience, which will contribute to a regional resilience. We need to rebuild our supply and value chains here and move away from the dependence that we were on the globalized value chains and supply chains, which were actually located in countries far away from us or the region. So that's an area where Japan can also help us fast in this. I think Ambassador Naoki suggested some very, very important issues. We have to do some of our own, some of the homework ourselves, but perhaps you can gently keep encouraging us to move in those directions to remove our own bottlenecks. Set up language training institutes, people-to-people contacts. One of the biggest obstacles that come is inability to communicate. So there are universities in Bangladesh. My center is nested in the IUB, which has a language Department of Foreign Languages, would welcome, I think, instructor in the Japanese language. And similarly, you can have someone for Bangla language in a counterpart university somewhere. I think now, basically, you send your technical people or professionals for language in Shantiniketan. It can be done in Bangladesh. Basically, if you help in this, you are also underpinning the exchange of technical people or training of technical people to go and fill some of your, the weaker spots in the skill demand. And finally, but not least, it was mentioned by one of the speakers about the many factors, the humanitarian crisis that exist. I think you mentioned it yourself, Ambassador Rauki, about the Rohingya refugee crisis. As you know, Bangladesh is sort of positioned between two crises that are about to implode. One on the western side in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is still, we are buffered by the vast expanse of India between us and Afghanistan, India and Pakistan. But on our immediate eastern flank is Myanmar, and Myanmar is on the point of implosion. Implosions will result, I emphasize, in an explosion. When that explosion takes place, neither China, nor India, nor Bangladesh, or Thailand, which are the immediate countries surrounding Myanmar, or the adjacent countries in ASEAN, be left untouched. In other words, the point I'm driving is the humanitarian crises have a tendency, if we look at international relations or the history of recent international relations in the last century, into regional instability and constant security threats by some parties or others, or by all parties consistently. Help us to stave that out, because otherwise, you consider us a part of your Asia. We are very much a part of your Asia. We cannot afford to have that instability disturbing our dreams together forward. Help us, we have consistently tried to promote regional cooperation in the region. From SAARC, BIMSTEC, BBIN, we are now, in fact, and that is my vision that I have been trying to push for the last 25 years or so, and I've now gone public. Can we not dream of a Bay of Bengal economic cooperation community? After all, that is, we deal with the economics. The politics, we sequester to the other side. We will have different political approaches to different issues, but we can always cooperate in economic and economic development aspects, which are mutual to all of us. You have excellent relations with all the ASEAN countries, which are Bay of Bengal littorals. Help us to develop and build these bridges, because then we can graduate to a Bay of Bengal economic cooperation community, or at least the idea of it, which will help us nest the problems within a safety net, which will prevent those problems from endangering us. And with those words, I will close my remarks. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ambassador Karim. Those words and others were extremely wise, and it's not for nothing that we in the ministry have always regarded you as a source of intellectual guidance. And I'm very pleased to hear you make all those practical suggestions within the matrix or within a theoretical framework, concluding with your proposal for the Bay of Bengal community, which I believe merits most serious thinking. With these words, we have come to the end of the list of our discussants. I have, though, a request for a couple of questions from the floor. And I would, very quick questions. I would give the floor now to Masood Khan, who has listened in from Cosmos Foundation, DMD. Masood, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Iftikhar Uncle. It's a pleasure to have listened to all the deliverables today. I enjoyed it very much. And thank you, Excellency, for your very detailed presentation. I have a question for you. The situation in Myanmar is worsening. There are some fears for another exodus of Rohingya refugees into Bangladesh. Japan has considerable leverage on Myanmar. How can Japan use its links with Myanmar to help resolve the current Rohingya issue and also prevent any future ones? Thank you.
Thank you, Masood, for that important question. I'm sure the ambassador will take note of it and respond. So in that case, as we had discussed earlier, Ambassador Ito, I'll give you the floor for about 10 minutes or so to make your concluding remarks and react to any of the points made by any of the discussants. Ambassador.
Thank you, Ambassador Iftikhar Chaudhary. I think we had really engaging discussions throughout the session, which I really appreciate. And if I may, I would like to pick up some of the points which the discussants touched upon. First one is the framework of economic dialogue, PPED, public-private economic dialogue, which Mr. Azad mentioned in his remarks as an early point he mentioned. So PPED is, I would say, Mr. Azad is brainchild, but this has been, I think, a major vehicle of economic partnership, particularly to discuss challenges and agenda for investment climate, business environment in Bangladesh. So this is a two-way dialogue, but because of this, the Japanese companies' interest on Bangladesh really increased. The last time when we had the PPED in Dhaka, although that was before my time, July 2019, more than 70 Japanese companies were represented, or Japanese business people were here in Dhaka. So that shows a very strong interest growing because of Bangladesh's economic development, as well as because of this vehicle being functioning. So through this vehicle, we have resolved some of the issues, and because of the framework, the government side tried really hard over the last 12 months to address and redress those issues and challenges which Japanese companies have, those companies already operating here in Bangladesh. I often say to my interlocutors, unless and until you resolve those issues and challenges which the existing Japanese companies have to be resolved, there will be no followers. Those, the prospective investors will not come as fast as you might be hoping for. So I think in that sense, I do really welcome the efforts being made by Bangladesh side over the last 1 year. But as I said, still some issues remaining. And if I may respond to Dr. Sarefudin's question on special economic zone by Japan, I would say potentially there are 3 Japanese economic zones in Bangladesh. First one is ongoing, that's Arai Hajal, that's JICA project. JICA is also funding this project, but main company doing this is Sumitomo Corporation, and Arai Hajal economic zone will be ready for its operation by the end of next year. So because of COVID, I cannot tell you right now how many companies are likely to make investment for manufacturing and operation inside that Arai Hajal special economic zone. But I'm sure that down the line, this Arai Hajal will attract investment from Japan. So, but important thing is, as I said, this should provide the best possible environment and best possible incentive. Then we may be able to see 100 companies making investment with the size of $1 billion US dollars. So I'm dubbing this as 100 company, $1 billion project. But this is really crucial to see the successful and continuous business partnership between Japan and Bangladesh. And if Arai Hajar is successful, then next comes Mirshorai as part of this Bongobondu Silpa Nagao Special Economic Zone. Now JICA is doing feasibility study of Mirshorai with the support of Sojitsu, another training company in Japan. So, but it depends on the success of Arai Hajar. And the third possible area of Japan Economic Zone is Matabari Moheshkari area. So as we develop Matabari Moheshkari as energy hub and industry zone, I'm sure that we will be having an opportunity to develop Japanese economic zone in Matabari Moheshkari area as well. So potentially there are 3 Japan special economic zones in Bangladesh as we develop our cooperation along this Big B corridor. But first, we need a very good success on Arai Hajar special economic zone. Dr.
Mr. Ambassador, can I
yes.
just?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I'm really glad to hear about Arai Hajar. I know quite well, Mirshorai as well, and Matabari. I think Arai Hajar is a very, very good place. But my suggestion, Mirshorai may be way too crowded. And third, I don't know about Matabari. So my suggestion would be, don't put all your eggs in too many baskets. So Arai Hajar, please, can be concentrated, and if it is successful, and it will be expanded there, not to really go. Matabari may be there, but Mirshorai, I'm a little bit skeptic about Mirshorai. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your suggestion. So I think similar thing can be said that when you talk about 100 special economic zones, I think immediate reaction from almost all pundits are, it's just far too many. So you should concentrate on those probables and hopefuls. So first, yes, we are working on Arai Hajar, first stage, second stage. So JICA has that in their perspectives already. But if Arai Hajar is successful, then there will be following development of Japan exclusive special economic zones, because that is very much expected by BESA and other government agencies. So, but I think special economic zone is very key to invite increasing number and value of Japanese companies' direct investment into Bangladesh.
Excellency, you could add that in the meantime, in the Arai Hajar economic zone, development work has been started very vigorously, and so many basic work has been done, and very soon the respective companies will be able to start their construction. And the issue of say 100 economic zone, yes, Bangladesh government also thought that 100 economic zone is a target till 2030, but they are implementing gradually. Like one of them is Arai Hajar, another is Mirshorai, and so many. But obviously, implementation of these economic zones gradually, that will give us much more impetus in implementing this economic zone. Thank you. Thank you.
I have just one question, Azad, to you also. Mirshorai, I understand, it's not exclusive to Japan, of course, because there will be all other actors involved in Mirshorai, right? There are many who have shown interest in Mirshorai. Am I right in assuming that?
Yes, Mirshorai is a big area.
Yeah.
About 30,000 acres of land.
Yes.
In the meantime, is taken under this project, and mostly these are land which has been naturally reclaimed from the sea, and huge construction work is going on by different stakeholders in home and abroad. This economic zone in Mireshorai, they have the power plant, independent power plant there, and also opportunity for the port facilities in this area. This will help developing this Mireshorai economic zone. And basically, name is one part is Mireshorai, but total area 30,000 acre, it is named after Bangabandhu Shilpanagari. So I believe a good number of work is going on. It's a great opportunity for the investors to work here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ansar. Ambassador, you still have another question to react to. How can Japan use its good relations with Myanmar to effect a resolution to the Rohingya issue? Is there any thoughts being given to this aspect? I think that was the essence of Masood's question.
I think this is a very difficult question to find an answer, obviously, in light of the current situation in Myanmar since February the 1st, when the coup took place. So it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen in Myanmar right now. Complete standoff is now going on between the two sides. And there is no clear picture in which direction the country is moving right now. So I would say you can't really have a prospect of seeing this repatriation taking place this side to the other side of the border. Although this NLD side is showing a very different attitude towards Rohingya refugees, and they are saying that they should give even nationalities to Rohingya refugees. So because of the fact the need that democratic force needs to form a very comprehensive, inclusive platform if they are going to have a secure power base in the future. So that is a very understandable move. But what we can say right now is, this is just the repetition of what I said during my presentation, but Japan will seize the opportunity to raise this very, very important issue wherever appropriate with the Myanmar side, this case, military side. And important thing is we really need to find a long-term lasting solution to the issue. And also, it's important to keep international community engaged inside this country, both Cox's Bazar camp as well as Bashanchao Island relocation plan. So this is all what I can say about Myanmar situation, because now nobody can have a really clear-cut prospect for the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Karim.
Yeah, just one quick word, a follow-up. Follow-up to the Rohingya situation in the Myanmar. I think Japan hopefully will be playing a very important role within the UN Security Council following, I'm sure it will get elected there. We have committed our support. And as Ambassador Naoki mentioned, and I agree that no single country will be able to do anything on its own within Myanmar. An implosion can only be stopped if you can pacify the situation internally. The internal pacification is likely not possible on the part of any one country or the other to do it, particularly when you have big power rivalry, also a big regional power rivalry playing out in there. The only way you can do the pacification in the present state, where Myanmar society seems to be very deeply divided, and divided in the sense that it seems to be the civil society ranging itself against the military establishment. and the military establishment is deeply entrenched in all sectors and nooks and crannies. It will probably need some mechanism of the UN. I don't know, after World War II, the UN had the Trusteeship Council, where it actually sent in administrators and security forces to run a country, govern it until it was stable to take over itself, or a peacekeeping force, which could be under blue helmets, or a regional peacekeeping force, again under blue helmet, but keeping major powers off. Once you can pacify the turmoil that is taking place, then solutions will probably start emerging from within Myanmar. And that is something which I would urge all our friends, and particularly Japan, to ensure that their part of Asia remains tranquil and does not slide into a form of chaos, which will ever be expanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. We have reached the end of what was an intensely stimulating discussion, triggered by a very, very informative and interesting presentation by Ambassador Ito, of course. Japan has always stood by Bangladesh, as we have seen, and we remain deeply beholden. As one of Asia's or developing world's fastest growing economies, Bangladesh also in many ways provides for Japan an excellent trading partner and a very useful investment destination. My hope will be that we can keep our win-win bilateral relations delinked from the uncertainties of the power play of major global state actors. And this is also the aspiration, I believe, that many of the people of the region that we live in have. I would thank Ambassador Ito and all other participants for their contributions. At the same time, on behalf of the participants, I'd like to express our gratitude to the Cosmos Foundation for providing us the platform. And I would conclude by wishing the Japanese people and government the best for the 2021 Olympics. I have here a medal replica, of a medal from the 1964 Tokyo Olympics. And this was brought back by my father, who on that occasion had led the Pakistan Olympic team to the Tokyo Games 57 years ago. So this is something that I have on my table, which Inayat has seen, of course. Okay, thank you very much, all of you. And I would now like to invite Chairman Inayatullah Khan for his concluding remarks. Inayat.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry. Let me thank you, our keynote speaker, Ambassador Ito Naoki, and all our distinguished discussants from Japan and Bangladesh. It has been a very mind-engaging, thought-provoking, stimulating, and insightful deliberations. I think this has been a wonderful, Bangladesh-Japan dialogue, and I feel very happy. It is, in fact, it's quite pleasing to note that there is almost unanimous agreement that the prospects are by and large brighter as long as we play our cards right. Both sides can look forward to benefiting from relationship in the days ahead, especially in the economic sphere and on the basis of people-to-people contacts. There is a scope for greater prosperity accruing to people on both sides. As we are poised to observe 50 years of Bangladesh-Japan bilateral relations, I wish to announce that the Cosmos Foundation would like to celebrate this important milestone of our friendship in a befitting manner. To that end, we would like to bring out an appropriate publication, including the contents of this roundtable. We would deeply appreciate if all the participants could forward us a paper based on their remarks made today. This can comprise between 3,000 to 4,000 words. It would be very convenient for us if you could do so by the end of September. We would like to thank Ambassador Naoki Ito for his valuable presentation, as well as his remarks in response to the points raised. We are deeply beholden to each and every distinguished discussant, our friends from Japan and Bangladesh, for their invaluable contribution, which has rendered this event a success. A special mention must be made of Nahar and Masood for making this event a great success. I also wish to record our sincerest appreciation for Dr. Iftikhar Chaudhry's proficient and competent conduct of the roundtable. With those comments, I would like to conclude, and I would request everybody to join their hands in applauding this very successful event today. And I wish you all good health and all the best. Thank you. Thank you very much.